Hey, I'm Keith Spira from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guest this week on Let's Talk with Keith Spira is Jazz Fest producer and director Quint Davis. Quint, we're going to be talking about Jimmy Buffett, and you wore a very appropriate shirt.
Yes, and hat. I came as a mini Jimmy.
Okay. A mini Jimmy.
A mini Jimmy. I Buffettized myself for your show.
Well, I appreciate that. We will talk about Jimmy Buffett and more this week on Let's Talk.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television.
Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Max Durbus Realtors has been providing commercial and industrial real estate services to its clients for nearly 100 years. Since 1934, Max Durbus has been locally owned and operated throughout the greater New Orleans area, including the North Shore, Hammond, and even the Mississippi Gulf Coast and beyond. We focus on your commercial real estate needs so you don't have to. More information is available at 504-733-4555.
The owners of the Detillier Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Detillier, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Detillier, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and no, I didn't get a guest spot on Miami Vice. It's springtime in New Orleans, so I thought I'd kick out the white linen suit for the first time this year. But let's get right to what's happening now. The play-in for the playoffs. That's right. The Pelicans were just a few seconds away on Friday night from making the playoffs. But that's right, the Sacramento Kings blew their lead to the Suns on Friday, and then on Saturday, all that had to happen was the Pels beat the Lakers or the Suns lose their game against Minnesota, and neither happened. So the Pels have to play in a play-in game tonight against the Lakers, and if they win that, they're going to be the 7th seed. Okay, that's easy. And then they'd have to play the Denver Nuggets, the defending champions. But if they lose, that means they have to play Friday night again. So they get 2 chances to get into the playoffs, and that's going to be against the winner of Sacramento and Golden State. Not an easy feat there either, but if you win that one, you're the 8th seed and you play OKC. Some might say that's favorable. We'll see. Just get in the playoffs and let the chips fall where they may. It's going to be interesting. The Pels, they've been streaky. You know, they lost 5 of 6 at home. They go on the road, win all 4, and they come back and lay an egg on Sunday. That was really tough to watch that game, but we'll see what they do this week. Their record at home, as we know, not very good, 21-19. In the NBA, some years we'd have been like begging for that kind of record. Not this year. They had the best road record in the NBA, 28-14. They had the extra game because of the game in Las Vegas. They counted that as a road game. The Celtics, 27-14, were second. Hey, but we'll see what happens this week. I'm looking forward to see what their comeback abilities are going to be tonight. Let's move on to the other side of basketball, the WNBA. Hey, we've been hearing Caitlin Clark's name for a long time, certainly down here since LSU beat them in the finals a year ago. She's been fantastic. Pistol Pete, some say. I say he's a little bit different than Pistol Pete, but the girl can shoot and the girl can score, and she is good for basketball, especially the women's side where people have a renewed interest. If they've never had one before, they certainly do now. I was watching every single game that she played and LSU in the NCAA tournament, but she was the first overall pick as expected. She's going to the Indiana Fever. She's staying in the Midwest, so I think that's great. Indiana needs a little infusion over there, so she will be their star. And Angel Reese fell to 7th And I love Angel Reese. I love her style. I love how she plays basketball. She's tough. She's going to go to the Chicago Sky, and she's going to team up with fellow SEC star Camila Cardoso, and that's going to be fun to watch. Those two power forward centers, they're going to be a mainstay for a long time, so look out for Chicago in the upcoming future. We remember what they did with Candace Parker just a couple seasons ago. And we know what we love down here, the NFL draft. That's right, the Saints have that 14th pick. A lot of later picks as well. That's going to be in Detroit. And we're going to have Mike Detillier, as we have every year, coming on this show. I cannot wait to talk to Mike about the people that he thinks the Saints might have a shot at pick 14 and maybe even further in the draft. Also, where are the LSU players going to go? Where are the Tulane players going to go? We'll get all that and more coming up next. Speaking of LSU, man, wow. Baseball's not doing great right now. As you know, they are now 3-12 in the SEC. That is shocking. They lost another series this week, and they're 0-5 in series in the SEC. As that 3-12 record will attest. Tennessee swept in this past weekend. Listen, Jay Johnson, I am a believer. I'm not sure what's going to happen the rest of the season, but their tough part of the SEC schedule is certainly over. Maybe they can make a run. I'm never going to doubt them. And who knows? I mean, if they can sneak in the tournament, you never know. The SEC record is much more favorable going down to the rest of the season. Also, Tulane. Hey, they won against UNO on Tuesday, but they also lost their series this week at UAB. They did win a thriller on Saturday, 14-13. That was something, but that's the only win they had all weekend. UNO, on the other hand, they play LSU tonight, but they went 3-0, but they played Bluefield State, so I can't give them a complete pass. They 10-run ruled them every single game, so congrats to my man Blake Dean and his crew over there. Hey, I'm looking forward to this. Like I said, LSU will host UNO tonight, so good luck to both those teams, and we shall see. Hey, we got a great show. I'm going to have Doug Mouton talk about the Pelicans playoff run and see what they possibly can do, if they can even get there. We're going to fill him, and then he's going to fill us in with everything about that. And Mike Detillier, like I said, I can't wait to talk NFL draft, particularly the Saints, coming up next, right here on Primetime Sports.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. And I know for some of y'all, this is going to be your favorite show of the year because you love the Saints and you love the draft and you love what's coming up. The unknown. What are they going to get? Is it going to be an offensive tackle? Is it going to be, are they going to get a quarterback in another round? What positions are the Saints looking at? Defensive line, they always seem to take one of those guys, but we have the best. And it's deja vu all over again because every single year we hit my man Mike Detillier. You know his famous draft book? That ended 2 years ago. He did it for almost 3.5 decades. But man, he still knows the draft and we're going to talk about it. But the reason it's deja vu over again, because I also have Doug Mouton on this show. In my first year doing this, 2016, I had the same two guys in the same week because we were all talking draft back then. We're going to talk more Pels with Doug later, but we're going to get into a little bit of draft with him, but this is going to be draft time with Mike Detillier, and I can't wait. Here he is. Mikey, good to see you, brother.
Great seeing you, Scott.
We've been doing this a while, huh?
A little bit, just a few years, just a few.
How's it been, man? I mean, I know it's a little easier because you work so hard on that draft book every year, man, and it's so much time that goes into it.
Yeah, it was a lot of time, a lot of effort, 37 years, and so it's 40 years of me covering the draft, and so you pick up a few things along the way, but yeah, it's a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of it I do the same. I just don't go to the printer with it.
Since you got the LSU shirt on, I'm going to start there instead of Saints. We're going to make the people wait just a little bit longer for the Saints stuff. LSU, they've got 3 guys that are considered certain #1 picks. Certainly 2 of them will be top 10. And let's just start there. The Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels, there's a lot of speculation on when and where he might be picked. Obviously, it's going to be top 5, could be top 2. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, great improvement from in 2022 to 2023. He told me at Manning camp, my thing is, he's the flip of what normally you see with a quarterback.
Yeah.
They don't want to hit the 5-10-foot jumper or the layup.
Yeah.
They want to throw the deep ball. The one thing with Jaden was he was hesitant with the deep ball. He'd much rather throw the short stuff in his first season at LSU. Then all of a sudden, he became a great deep ball thrower, and he said he really worked at it along with Malik and Brian and Chris Hilton and everybody else involved. that was something he worked on a tremendous amount, and you saw his big play skills. The one thing he stays away from is the sack. And I think that gives him the advantage over Drake May. Man,
Bingo to that, Mike. Bingo.
Sean Payton used to always preach about that. Don't give me a quarterback that's going to take that sack, and now it's 3rd and 22 for me. Give me the guy that can be a bit of a playmaker. He's accurate. Brian Kelly described him as the ultimate gym rat, that I got to run him out of here, that he watches so much film. He wants to be on the field, totally dedicated to the game. And yes, he is thin of build, and he's never going to be heavy.
But he's much bigger than he was. Think about when he got to LSU.
And he's probably 185 pounds.
And he's 210 now. I mean, that's 25 pounds. That means something. I remember because I was following. We had a guy on my Fox crew. When, we traveled the country. That was a big Arizona State guy. So I had to hear about Jay Daniels forever. But first time I saw him, I said he's elusive. His arm wasn't great because he could scatter it, but he was small. I kept saying this guy's going to get racked. So when LSU got him to compete with Miles Brennan, remember? People forget about that, right? I did it quickly. But the fact is, I've watched him not only mature physically in his body, like most people do at his age, but also the touch on the ball and the accuracy on his throws, Mike. That's the thing that's separating him from being a really good quarterback to being one that could be a lead an NFL franchise.
And he's scared the bejesus out of you every time he takes off running.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
We talked to Brian Branch. Brian did some workouts here. And he was like, I thought I had a beat on him twice. I had the angle. He outran the angle.
He outran the angle.
Now,
I'm just going to tell you how hard that is.
That is really difficult.
Yeah, that's
so
special.
To me, once you get past Caleb going to Chicago, I think it makes all the sense in the world. Cliff Kingsbury and his type system, I think it fits Jaden Daniels like a glove. So I think he goes to the Commanders.
Right. He's going to be in the nation's capital, huh?
Yeah, and so and they've been wanting a quarterback for quite some time now.
Where do you see the other guys going since we're on the topic of quarterbacks? Those guys up the top, JJ obviously, and we all know Drake May, you just mentioned.
I think Drake goes 3rd. New England would make a lot of sense. The big question mark is who comes up to get JJ. Now, he isn't a top 10 player for me. But I think he'll go that high because, come on, I work with one all the time that says, Mike, come on, you know better than anybody. Quarterbacks trump over every other position, and Bobby's right, absolutely right about that. Is it Minnesota? Do they make that move up? They do have 2 first-round picks that they could help facilitate a trade. And so I would think it wouldn't shock me to see 1, 2, 3, 4, which has never happened.
No.
All be quarterbacks.
Well, speaking of that 4th one, J.J. McCarthy, I mean, listen, let's do this. Is it true, these rumors? I've been hearing them because I have friends on the West Coast. I did a podcast just yesterday where the Chargers are making noise about maybe moving Herbert and then moving up to 5 and giving 11 and 27 away. And then, because I think that'd be crazy, but when you think of Harbaugh just winning a national championship with J.J., is it possible at all?
Yeah, you'd be put in salary cap hell for 2 years because you just signed Herbert to a new deal. So I doubt really seriously that would happen. But I could see the Chargers saying that in the hope that if Arizona doesn't find a partner or they say, we're going to pick Marvin Harrison Jr., no matter what.
Yeah.
They had the 5 spot. That's who you'd have to deal with to get McCarthy.
Okay, I'm going to get to Marvin Harrison Jr. in a second because there's a lot of speculation on those wide receivers, but I want to stay on quarterbacks for a second. And we know what Tulane has been doing. Let me give a shout out, first of all, to Mike Arata and that group over there with the Fear the Wave Collective because they're building a Tulane athletics powerhouse. I mean, I saw John Summerall at Hogs for a Cause. He had been on the show right when he got the job, and he is so excited for this job. I mean, this guy has just got the energy, but he doesn't get the quarterback they had last year, Michael Pratt. And I want your opinion because the first time I saw Michael Pratt was the watching a full game of his was the year of Hurricane Ida, and they were playing at Oklahoma, and they almost beat the Sooners, right? And I watched that game with former Oklahoma legend Spencer Tillman. We were on the road, and I'm like, this guy opened my eyes, and I've watched him ever since. And we saw that great year they had 2 years ago, beating USC in the Cotton Bowl, and his leadership abilities, his running ability, his passing ability. And then this year he had another good season, some injuries there too. But what is your full take on Michael Pratt as a quarterback and his prospects in the National Football League?
I think he's a 3rd-round pick. He's a top 100 guy, mentally tough. throws a nice ball, over-the-top deliveries, real smooth. Where he's gotten so much better is what I call throw the ball in the bucket throws. Okay, right over the top of the defender, and the receiver makes the catch. He has gotten really good at that. He's got above average mobility skills. He can move around the pocket and buy you time.
Right.
He can run with the football, but his dedication to the game, how well he takes this, how serious he takes the game, and his study habits and work habits are really, really good. So I think, you know, you're going to quite possibly see 6 going around 1, at least 5, wherever Penix and Bo Nix fall into the bunch.
Very interesting.
I think the guy that's jammed between Nix and Pratt is Spencer Rattler.
Spencer Rattler's a wild card.
I think Spencer gets picked a little bit ahead of Pratt, but I think he goes early to mid-3rd round.
Yeah, that was a big prospect coming out of the state of Arizona.
He was the guy.
And he went to Oklahoma. He had flashes that first year, and then the second year, it's just a big precipitous drop-off, and that's when Caleb Williams took over. And then Spencer went to South Carolina, and he was average at first, and then he picked up a lot towards the end of his career there. And I thought, particularly when they beat Clemson, remember that the year, end of his first year there? So that's a good wild card there. Let's go back to the wide receivers. We're not on the Saints yet, but I want to talk about those 3. You mentioned, you know, Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, LSU's got a great one in Malik Neighbors, and we'll get to Brian Thomas in a second. But there's a guy in Washington, Rome Odunze, that I've seen a lot of games because we worked the Pac-12 games this season, and he is special. So when you put those 3 together, where do you see them falling?
I think Harrison's going to go in the top 5.
Top 5.
I think Arizona would seem to be the right fit for him. I mean, they really want a big play guy. He's a big physical receiver. You could compare his physicalities a little bit to Larry Fitzgerald, a younger one coming out of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Before he goes to the
Wow, okay.
And there is a lot of
I agree
physical.
with you. Now that I think about it, I agree with you.
The same way I would compare Malik to Jamar Chase.
Nice.
Physically, they look the same. They sort of run the same. Malik played across the board, XYZ receiver, can catch the football. He's deceptively fast after the catch. Great route runner. Anything you asked him to do, he'll do it.
So where do you see Malik falling?
I think the Giants would be the team for me with Malik. That would seemingly be the spot for him. But, you know, when you needed something,
some of these catches he made
were unbelievable.
Like, look at these things. I mean, he's something else, man.
And he's got a pair of mitts. And think about when he came out of high school, he was the last signee.
Isn't that crazy?
He was going to go to Mississippi State, and Coach Owenall convinced him the night before
Isn't that wild?
to go to LSU instead. And
Foster Morrow, last guy. Remember that year?
He was the guy. And so he's going to be top 7 or 8 pick. And then I think Odunze, I wouldn't be shocked he ends up in Chicago. Now you can team him up with DJ on one side, Keenan Allen, who's kind of a rent player for a year. But, man, you talk about a great contested catch receiver. That's what Rome Odunze does so well.
I remember a couple years ago, you're the one. I remember this vividly, and I was asking you about might have been 3 years ago, I guess. I was working with you at WWL Radio, and I was asking you about this class that LSU had. And one of the guys you mentioned that I didn't know much about was Brian Thomas Jr. And the season that his breakout year was this past year, obviously, 17 touchdowns. The guy, you said he's got all the tools. Tell me what makes him special, and where might he fall in the draft for LSU?
With Brian's a football neophyte. Okay, he only started playing football in the 11th grade.
Wow.
He was a basketball player, track athlete. The thing that jumps out at you, his size. And his length. Also, too, he's not one step fast, but he's 2-step fast. He gets 2 steps, you in trouble.
Yep.
You see in the back of his cleats after that, he became a much more confident player, catching the football between kind of arms and hands and being a more secure receiver. We're seeing sort of a genesis of this happen at LSU in the spring with Kyron Lacy.
Yeah.
From Thibodeau High School, who I watched since he was in high school, play football and basketball. We're seeing the exact same thing happen a year ago with Brian Thomas. I think he's a teens pick, 15 through 18 in round one. That's where Brian Thomas is going to end up in his draft class. And I think he may have went a little higher.
Yeah.
But the Greeks settled this years ago. Got a chance to pick a really talented big guy or a really talented small guy. You go with the big one.
You do.
And I think that wave of offensive linemen from 10 through like 16 will kind of push him a little farther back.
When you have second and third or third and goal and you need a touchdown, it helps to have that big target, right? Because it's squeezed in there and you don't have a lot of time. I know Derek Carr,
you don't have space,
for instance, would love a guy like that.
Would he?
You know what I'm saying? Because that big target, you're looking around real fast and all of a sudden you see those big hands and you want to get into those mitts. LSU's got a couple defensive linemen. One was a big-time prospect a couple years ago before injuries, Mason Smith. And obviously, Mekhi Wingo has come on, obviously, the last few years, and he's great. But where do you see these LSU linemen, defensive linemen, falling in this draft?
Okay, Mason grew up probably 15 minutes from my house.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, he played at Terrebonne High School. So I got to see Mason from 10th grade all the way on. He was a basketball player, soccer. Can you imagine him running down, kicking a soccer ball? But he was a soccer athlete. I've always said about Mason, he's the best big man athlete I've ever seen from the Bayou. Not the best football big man,
right?
But the best big man athlete. He looked so good as a freshman, then he tears up his knee last year, major disappointment. Just wasn't making plays, and he was getting washed out against the run. I think he got help with Pete Jenkins coming in, helping get some of the technical part. But you're going to pick him, and he goes high because there aren't a lot of men walking around who are 6'5", 310 pounds that can run like Mason, and he can rush the quarterback. Where he's got to get better is his ability to stop the run.
Yep.
He plays too high. They get under his pads and move him around. Don't be shocked he goes late in round 2. But on
there was a time that he was talking about top 10, remember? I mean, before the injuries, so that could be a steal if you get him that late.
And remember, he has got some similarities to a guy that came out a few years back, Al Woods.
Yes. And he had a long career.
Al played forever.
Yeah, forever, right?
And now he got cut loose by the Saints, but he wasn't ready. And I think for Mason, he's got to go to the right team, have some mentors to kind of help him along to learn the technical part of the game because he was always bigger, faster, stronger than everybody. He's learned that. Mekhi Wingo is one of my favorites. Okay, he's barely 6 foot tall. And you talk about a guy that's got great football instincts, leverage skills, his ability to get his hands and move you around, and he gets that penetration inside as a pass rusher. He's really good against the run. Pete, before he got hurt, Jenkins had told me, Mike, my plan is to play him at defensive end, is to move him from inside to outside. So he's got some versatility there. Man, I'm a big fan of Mekhi Wingo. I don't think he gets out of round 3.
Okay, and speaking of guys that are local, I got one more, Tulane wide receiver, Jaquan Jackson. He certainly helped himself at the combine, but this guy is a guy that can do a lot of things for you. Is he a sleeper, or is this guy going to definitely be a guy that he might be playing in the NFL, not just drafted?
Well, from people who are doing double checks, I've gotten more phone calls about Jackson than anybody else.
From Tulane, okay, I love it.
Because of the fact of his speed.
Yeah.
I saw him in high school. He went to Hornville High School.
What was the exact time at the draft? It was like 4.2.
He was in the 4.4s, and
I thought he was a little bit faster.
And he's consistently run like 4.37, 4.4.
Yeah, that's around that.
And that's fast.
Yes.
I don't care how you cut it. It's fast. He actually played some quarterback at Hornville High School. Wow. And he's returned punts and kicks.
Yes.
So he knows what to do with the football once he gets it in his hands. The big part about him is thinner build. He's got to get physically stronger, but you see he's improved as a route runner, great speed. And if you even with him, then he's leaving you because he's got another gear out in space.
I know what I'm thinking. Brian Thomas was the one with like the 4.2 something.
Yeah.
Right? That's crazy when you got a guy that tall running that fast. Hey, let's get to the Saints prospects. And before we get to this great offensive tackle class, other than the local players, I think my favorite player in the draft, without question in my mind, is Brock Bowers. This tight end can do a lot of things. I've been hearing about him. I lived in Atlanta for 20 years. When he was committed to Georgia, all my friends were saying, look out for this cat. And for once, these guys are right because they like to talk a big game, but they're really rarely right about it, although Georgia's been great. But this guy was a big part of their success because he is a weapon, no matter where he plays on the field.
He's a wide receiver playing tight end.
Certainly.
Now, the one thing I give him great credit for is that people say, okay, he's a little over 6'2", he's not a big guy, but he's physical as a run blocker and he gives you great effort.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of times these guys, they're just getting away, okay, in a run blocking thing. You know, he gives you a lot of effort, and he's a solid inline blocker. But he is a nightmare to cover one-on-one downfield. His ability to find that open crease. Okay, if I'm playing Georgia, ain't nobody on that team scaring me outside but one.
Yeah.
And I'm bracketing him or I'm double covering him.
You got to keep your eye on number 19.
He still gets open.
Yeah, he does.
It's amazing. And it's red zone, short yardage, his ability to move the chains. You know, is it crazy to compare him to Kelsey as far as like ability to catch the ball and make things happen? He's got some of Kelsey. He's not as big, but yeah. He's not as big, but you know, he gives a lot of effort like Kittle. Yeah, as a run blocker. Good call on that. So he's sort of a combination. Got injured late last year with the ankle, but man, I think he's a top 10 pick. Yeah, Jets would be crazy not to. The Jets pick him. Yeah, they got to. If he falls to the Saints, it gives you a lot of talk about what do we do here. Listen to what Dennis Allen said when he was at the owners' meetings and people questioned him about, will you add another receiver? And his comment is, well, I'm not going to use the term receiver. I will use the term pass catcher. I knew exactly who he was talking about. He was talking about Brock Bowers at that point. But to me, it would be surprising if he gets past the Jets at 10. I've heard you say this before. This offensive tackle class is among the best you've ever seen, if not the best. So that is a position, as we know, Ryan Ramczyk's future is very cloudy at best with his injury situation. He may never play again. Who knows? Let's hope he does. But there's a lot of guys that aren't Italian that their last name starts with F-A and ends in a vowel, all right? And I'm going to start with one because I've interviewed him twice doing games. Talise Fuaga, who is phenomenal, and we're going to just go ahead and keep this open-ended, but you can start there and move forward because there's one that plays at Bama, and then one's at Penn State, and then the other ones. But go ahead and go. Fuaga, to me, is the best run blocker from Oregon State. Yep. He is technically sound. You just look at this big guy, and if he gets his mitts on you, it's over. You got no shot. As a run blocker and as a pass protector, he shuts you down. He needs a little bit of work as far as from a body balance standpoint, but I think every lineman does when they hit the league because you're not seeing guys like that come after you each and every game. I think he's a top 12 pick, but man, if he's at 14, there's no way he's going to 15. No, you can't. He's that good of a player. He's revered among his teammates. I'm going to tell you, we did 3 of their games and 2 of them at home, and the teammates, they look up to him. I mean, it's obvious because you get 3 guys in a meeting together, and they all kind of, you know, they look at him like he's our guy. When he speaks, they're definitely listening. They're not cutting in. So there's something about that locker room presence that guy will bring wherever he's at. Yeah, no question about it, Scott. So let's go Penn State. Another one. Olu Fashanu is, I think, the best pass protector of the group. Really good athlete, foot movement skills, picture perfect. He doesn't have big hands, but he's got good hand placement. I'd like to see him become a better run blocker. He's more of a leverage guy than he is a power player. Yeah, it's like he reminds me of Jonathan Ogden just looking at this right here. It's weird, you know, technique was great. Oh, his technique is really good, and as a pass protector, he shuts you down. Yeah. Now, again, you'd like to see him become a little better power player in the running game. He is awfully good, and he's played left tackle all of his life. Right. Okay. So that's the spot. Okay, when you got a right-handed quarterback, you'd like to fill, but for the Saints, they got holes at right tackle and left tackle. Could he last to the Saints? It's a possibility. I didn't think so. If you'd asked me, going early, right? You know, and the receivers. Yes, you're a good point. And Brock, and the possibility. That's a good point, Mike. Of Dallas Turner going to an Atlanta, or Quinyon Mitchell, maybe a corner getting sprinkled into that. Okay, you got that, and that's always a surprise pick. Sure.
And that's why the Saints could get a real steal at offensive tackle here. And another one's at Washington, right? Troy Fautano.
Man, Fautano, and I know you got a chance to see him play at Washington. He's been a left tackle. A lot of people, okay, he's not 6'5". Are we going to kick him inside? What? I'm putting you at left tackle and prove to me you can't play it. He is the most technically sound of all of the offensive linemen in this draft class. He is the best technician, and he's played left tackle basically his entire career. And so you know what? He's playing left tackle for me. And I know he was not the blindside guy for Penix, who's a left-hander. Only thing is, I didn't see no pressure being put on Penix most of the season. The only people that got pressure was Michigan.
Hey, by the way, Alabama always seems to have linemen. We know this, and they got another one, my man JC. This guy's wingspan, I could be wrong, but it looks like it's extraterrestrial. Can we talk about him a little bit?
Okay, he's not this tall, lengthy offensive lineman. He's more...
JC Latham.
Yeah, JC is more of a compact build, but you talk about a man. He's got 350 pounds. You just take a look at those pictures of him. Does he look like a 350-pound man to you? Mm-hmm. And that's how big he is. He's a great run blocker. He's improved as a pass protector. But when he...
It's like he's holding there, but
yeah,
okay.
Well, he's got it inside, so he's good.
That's all right.
He's got it inside.
Right,
he's good.
right,
but when he catches you, it's over with. But his run blocking skills, when Alabama needed something in the running game, they ran behind J.C. Latham.
Let's talk about some steals real quick in the second round. I know you like a receiver out of Florida who was at Arizona State, who, by the way, played Dayton Daniels back in the day.
Yeah.
Talk about some of those guys.
Yeah, Jay's the one who told me, he said, keep your eye on Ricky Pearsall.
From Florida. University of Florida, right.
He's like, man, he's a great route runner. He catches the ball well in space. He's got some speed, another gear. And you can see a lot of guys are track athlete fast. Yeah. Put a helmet and pads on them, they slow down. Ricky Pearsall's not that type of guy. He's got speed, terrific hands.
Look at this, man. He's driving it like OBJ.
And he'll go over the middle to make a tough catch. I think midway into the second round, he may be a guy. If the Saints go offensive line, you may have to take a real hard look at Ricky Pearsall in round 2. That's where I think he'll end up.
Tyler Newman, I did a lot of Minnesota games. I know safety is a position. The Saints are getting long in the tooth then. Obviously, they're not bringing back, one of the guys. So, and you got Honey Badger's getting older. What do you think about him?
Yeah, yo, buddy. Tim Brando and I were talking about Tyler Newman. He's like, Mike, you absolutely correct on it. I think he's the best safety in this draft class. His ability to come up the seam and run support. He matches up well in coverage. He's a ball hawk.
Yeah, he is a ball hawk for sure.
And he kind of times it just right to make a play with the football in flight. He's another guy I've got projected midway into round 2. And what you brought up is correct. That it's a spot where
we need help.
You need some help there. Tyron isn't getting any younger, and Marcus May is not on this team anymore.
Exactly.
So I think he'd be a great fit for the Saints.
A guy that's got some pedigree, a national championship, Chris Jenkins. And we're not talking the guy who hit the shot for Villanova to win the national championship years ago. We're talking about defensive tackle. Big boy from Michigan. What do you think?
Yeah, his dad played in the NFL for a long time with the Panthers. He kind of hunkers down everything in the middle, great in run support. He pushes the pocket really well as a pass rusher. He's not a great pass rusher, but he's got that ability to take away your launch pad. Where you want to step up and make that throw, he takes it away. Can he run for a big man? And his football instincts, he knows how to play this game, okay? Learning from his dad at a real young age that this is the commitment you have to make. I thought he was an unsung hero for the Wolverines last year.
He made plays, man. I mean, in side to side for his size, nice speed and agility. Hey, Mike, you did this for a long time, but we have a guy in the back who I bring out. He's been on the show about 3 or 4 times, named Logan Graffia, Sports A2Fe. He's got some prospects we might surprise you with, okay? And I want your opinion. Look at this, Sports A2Fe.
Hey, how about that?
Look at this book. Look at this.
Man,
right
I
here,
used
Logan.
a book like that years ago.
You might as well show a picture of yourself now, too, if you're doing that. He's out there controlling the picks. I love it. But Malachi Corley out of Kentucky. Thoughts there?
Yeah, Western Kentucky kid.
Western Kentucky, yeah.
A short, squatty guy. They've used him a little bit like the 49ers used Deebo Samuel. He's not as good as Deebo, certainly doesn't have that type of quickness and speed, but man, he catches the ball well. He's a really strong route runner. He gets into and out of his cuts and breaks real quickly, and he's got good hands. I think he's a late second-round pick.
So there was a guy, I'm flashing back, so I haven't seen this first name since 2008 when I was helping Brando, speaking of, produce the tornado-driven SEC tournament in Atlanta. And the guy, Georgia, who was a low seed, like 10 or so, they ends up winning the tournament behind a guy named Sundiata Gaines. Well, this guy's named Sundiata Anderson. He's an edge guy from Grambling, in-state. Any thoughts on him?
Tall, lanky guy. I think he's a later round pick, 5th, 6th round.
A sleeper.
He's the type of guy that you know you got to develop, but you like his ability to use those long arms to get around a blocker. And he's got really good closing speed to the quarterback. Okay, he needs some technical work.
Sure.
But, man, he's a really good athlete. I can't teach you to be that type of athlete. And to have that type length to be able to get around a blocker.
If we can't get Newman down here from Minnesota, what about a guy from the Air Force named Trey Taylor? Because I don't know much about him, but my draft expert in the back does. That's Logan.
Yeah, he's a real smart player, instinctive, understands this game at a different level. They've used him a lot up front, not as much in the coverage part of the game, but when they have asked him to do it, he does a good job. He's played up front almost like a big nickel. And so I think you're looking at an early 3rd day pick, which would be in round 4 for him. He's a really good athlete, smart. I don't know what happened, how he got overlooked, that he ended up at Air Force, but man, he's a really good football player.
So Mike, you've been with me through 4 studios.
Yeah.
Causeway, Harahan on one of the Vickery docks or whatever.
Yeah.
We were at Loyola over there on St. Charles Avenue. And now here, but the 5th time you come, I mean, the 5th studio's coming up next because we're going to be out by the lake.
And if I live any longer, I might get into double digits.
I feel like I'm getting old over here, moving studios around, but I've enjoyed each one. And because of your thankfulness on my part for you coming each time, I'm giving you a Taz shirt for your wife as well.
Oh, I appreciate it. We got she will too.
Yeah, and I thank you so much.
And here, this is awesome too.
Yeah,
great fit.
They're amazing, aren't they?
And you can get hot in them, so to speak.
Right.
And it cools you off real quickly.
That's so true. And Mike, we haven't given you, I know we've shared a steak before, but
yes, indeed.
Mr. John's Steakhouse is somebody newer for us. So there you go. Mr. John, you know who owns that, does he, Vega?
Vegas, yeah.
And you got to ask for Archie Rodenkirk because he'll get you that red carpet treatment.
All right.
All right, Mike, appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Scott.
Check
appreciate
Mike
it, buddy.
out
Thank you so much.
On WWL Radio, they're going to be having draft shows, so tune in the next few days and find out exactly when that is. Draft is next week, right? Or the week?
Next week.
Next week. It's next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Yeah, 9 days away from now. So, yeah, this is where you want to be the next 9 days. And on the following week when they do the postscript to the draft so he can tell you what the Saints picked up. But looking forward to that. Hey, now we're going to turn our attention to hoops mainly. And his name is Doug Mouton. That's right. He's been covering the Pelicans for quite a while. And the Pelicans are in a situation tonight where they don't have to win. But it'd be nice. You get the 7th seed, you know you're in. But if they lose, well, you got to play again Friday night and figure out if you're going to make it. Although that could be more advantageous. We'll tell you why coming up next right here on Primetime Sports.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At the mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll.
You've heard about rugby, the hard hits, the whole no pads thing, but rugby is more than that. It's this, a whole day, a whole culture.
Well, the fans bring the energy, so we better bring it too.
Every play, every match, for the city we call home.
This is rugby. And we are NOLA Gold.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, listen, my next guest has been a great friend of the show. I mentioned earlier that it was 8 years ago this week that he was on the same show as Mike Detillier back when the first year I did it in 2016. But hey, Doug Mouton is a well-known name here. 2 decades ago after Katrina, he got to WWL and then took over as sports director in 2012, right when I moved back to town. And here he is again. We're going to talk some Pels, but I'm going to start with something because we're right off Mike Detillier. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Always great to see you.
Always great to be had here.
I appreciate you so much, and I'm going to ask you this because Detillier just talked about the Saints draft and you know, some potential needs and potential players. What are your thoughts on this draft coming up?
Yeah, look, obviously they need an offensive lineman. I do think if you look at 14, there's a bunch of those offensive linemen. I know Mike talked about a bunch of them. I do think one of the guys who can play inside makes much more sense than just a pure tackle because you want to leave the option open of Trevor Penning being able to play.
Right.
I don't know if he will.
Right.
So you want a guy that can play inside or outside. So if Trevor Penning suddenly takes a big step forward, you can play your first-round draft pick on the inside. I do think, this is my one thought about this, the Saints took a different approach in free agency than they've taken in the last 10 years. The 2 big guys they signed were both one-year deals, Willie Gay and Chase Young. They took it with the idea of getting our books right. And I do think maybe that translates. Maybe that idea that, you know what, we're thinking more long-term as opposed to filling right now. So maybe this is the draft when you have a bunch of offensive linemen where you try trading back if you can and try getting extra picks. They have a 1 and a 2, then they don't pick again till 5. They have nothing in the 3rd round, nothing in the 4th round as of right now. So maybe this is the year.
Wow, okay.
If a couple of, and when there are 6 or 7 offensive linemen, everybody sort of feels the same way. I can get one. So that's when they maybe start sliding. Maybe you can go down 8 or 10 or 12 picks, still get your offensive lineman and get something else because the team needs a lot of help across the board.
And on another topic, LSU baseball. Remember when in 2019 when LSU football won that wonderful national championship, and it's
a natural step back.
You had a natural step back. You had a couple mediocre years. I know their competition's been tough in the SEC, but they're 3-12. They've lost all 5 series. This is a little bit unusual, particularly for LSU baseball.
Yeah, they're not finding pitching. They keep searching, and they're not finding it. They certainly have talent. They have a high-end talent. Tommy White is still maybe a top 10 pick in the draft. Yeah, look, it's been a struggle. You'd expect a step back. It's been a bigger step back than I think a lot of us thought it would be. And right now, I got to tell you, at 3-12, they're 12th or 13th in the SEC. They may not get into the NCAA tournament. I mean, the standard is always at least
you have to start winning,
hosting a regional. But right now, as it is now, the SEC is not going to get 12 or 13 SEC bids into the NCAA tournament. Now, they'll probably get 10, so it's not like they have a ton of work to do, but they got to start doing some
schedule lightens up a little bit. I mean, I know you're not...
A little bit, but it's still an SEC schedule.
Certainly is, but you played 5 really good ones.
You played 5 You did. You did. And
you don't expect to lose 12 or 15.
And you don't. And getting swept is so hard to pull out of.
It is.
And that's happened. Yeah, it's been a bigger step back than I thought it would be. I'm still not giving up on the season.
No.
But man, they got to start doing some work right now.
It's happened twice, 2 sweeps, and then lost 2 out of 3 times. So that's tough. But let's talk about the Pelicans because this is the moment du jour. As we know, we tape this show in the daytime, so they are playing as we speak. They're playing as we speak. So right now. Don't flip over yet. But the fact is that was poor timing. But the fact is that this team has been up and down, no question about it. A great road team, 28-14. I mean, that's mercurial. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's stunning to be that much better on the road than at home. That literally doesn't happen in any sport, but
particularly basketball. Right?
I know, right? It's crazy.
And so, but they do give you a lot. But that game yesterday, I mean, Sunday was such a letdown. To see. So now that this game's probably halftime, what do you think could potentially happen?
Well, look, the Lakers are a bad matchup for the Pelicans. You don't like it because they have no one who can naturally match up with Anthony Davis, and they have no one who can naturally match up with LeBron James. And on Sunday, LeBron James literally the points in the paint. At one point, they were plus 34.
Man
points
among
in the paint.
boys.
Yeah, and they were killing the Pelicans inside. It's not a good matchup. So I don't know, obviously, whether they'll
Davis
come
was
out of
shooting like 80% at one point.
And, right, and the Pelicans couldn't buy a three,
right,
which has been a little off and on throughout the course of the season. They do have some of the best
on the road. It's been pretty good generally. I mean,
in the NBA, it didn't work against the Lakers. Look, if they don't get the game tonight, they do have Friday. And honestly, getting into the playoff as the 8 seed, I know you don't want to be the 8, you'd rather be the 7 than the 8, but I like the matchup against OKC better than the matchup against Denver.
Hello.
So maybe
you don't want to play Jokic, okay?
Yes, maybe. Yeah, right. Because you're talking about not having matchups.
I was there for the finals last year in Denver and against the Heat, and that experience is something else. I mean, I love what we have here. Dude, let me just tell you, it is another world over there, and that fan, they're right on you, and it's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I love that Denver team. I just think they're fun to watch. I think they're well put together.
Great basketball.
I think they're balanced.
Yeah.
It's beautiful basketball.
I don't want to play them first round.
No, I don't want to play them first round either. So
well, you might have to.
Maybe it's better if they don't beat the Lakers and then they can come out of Friday's
Puts the pressure on
game.
Friday night, right? Because it
puts enormous pressure on Friday night. The one thing you can't do after this season, as good as it's been, you get to 49 wins, is not get to the playoffs at all.
Oh my gosh.
That would be a huge disappointment.
My next point was going to be, it's better to play the Nuggets and not get in.
Yes, agreed.
Perfect world. I mean, OKC is having a great season, and they have our number as well, it seems.
And they do. But that matchup,
doesn't scare you as much.
No, it doesn't scare me as much. And the last game against OKC was super close, and OKC got it done in the last 3 minutes. I like the odds with OKC better than the odds with Denver. Although, look, give it a choice, get it done. Look, I thought they were going to get it done Sunday, and then I thought Phoenix was going to lose one of the last two. It was just a
the game Friday night. I was following the Phoenix.
We all were.
The Phoenix game, and literally they led a little bit in the first half, but after the first 6 minutes, they led for like 10 seconds in the second quarter, and then the Kings had the lead definitively the rest of the game.
And then they fell apart
until the last 8 seconds. That's when Nurkic hit the free throw. That's the first lead they had in literally most of the game.
Yeah.
And so that was frustrating. Then I knew once that happens, it's like, okay.
Because you love the matchup with Minnesota.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
That's the one I wanted.
You would have loved the matchup with Minnesota.
Better than the others.
Better than the others.
Yeah.
And look, I will say this, no matter... Look, getting to the playoffs is the big thing. Even if they had Denver, and even if they get swept by Denver, 4 games in the playoffs is going to help this team going forward.
Just like the Suns a couple years ago, right?
Just like OKC last year.
Yeah.
OKC was
but the Suns, for us to play them and get that full series.
Yes.
Right.
But I mean, look what OKC did.
Yeah.
They came out of the play-in last year, springboard to the number 1 seed. You hope you can do something like that, but man, you got to get to the playoffs and just get those playoff games. Get Zion's feet wet in the playoffs.
Yes,
and then
it means so much.
Yeah, it means so much. And if they don't win a first-round playoff series, I'm okay with that. But man, you got to get there.
What about this year, though? I mean, we've had years like this, but now with the plan, now there's 10 teams that you could honestly make an argument for almost all of them, because if you flipped it at certain parts of the season, remember the Kings were rolling with that great offense?
Yeah.
Now, they've had a couple players out that I hear might be coming back, which means a lot. Herter can shoot the rock out, and they have a couple others. But that's just one example. That's probably the 10th team that you might think might. But Golden State's been there. They went on a roll towards the end of the season. The Lakers, we know that they can come out of nowhere and win a title. They got 2 stars. But all the up and down the thing, any of those 10 teams, you're like, I can make an argument for y'all.
Yeah, the 10th seed is 10 games over 500.
Right.
I mean, the 10th seed is a good team.
Right.
10th seed's not a. In the East, 9 and 10 both have losing records.
Right.
In the East, you can't make a case for the 9 or the 8 or the 7.
Atlanta Hawks, yeah.
But in the West, the 10th seed is 10 games over 500. These are really good teams. And look, I will say, regardless of what happens tonight and Friday in the first round of the playoffs, it's been a super positive season for the Pelicans. We've seen what this team can do. We've seen the upside. We've seen the potential. They're not there yet. And what has happened all year is when they go on the road, when the first game back home, it always seems to be a disaster. And this was a first game back home Sunday, and it looked like they had never played with Brandon Ingram before, and they had no idea what they were doing with him on the court. Hopefully, he's a little more integrated into the offense, and you don't have what looks like a completely disjointed offense and then a horrible defense. But I do think it's been a really successful year. Zion has stayed on the court. He's been a really good player. I thought for the first half of the season, he was probably a little too passive. You've seen him
a little too heavy.
A little too heavy in the
great
first half
shape
of the
from mid-December on.
That's right. You've seen him get in more in basketball shape and get a little more aggressive. And you've seen what he can be with this team. It hasn't been consistent. It hasn't been all the time. But we've seen some glimpses that have been fun to see, a lot like Oklahoma City did last year, and I'm hoping this springboards them. But man, I'm going
to take you back to 3 or 4 weeks ago because, Doug, I was getting some texts, and I'm sure you get some from your friends that think they know basketball, and they're like, this P.J. McCollum's washed up. He's done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? The guy had some minor injuries. He's coming back. And all of a sudden, this dude has been unbelievable. 9 threes on one night. The next night, he hits 8.
Yeah.
I remember a time in the NBA, that was NBA records. When Brian Shaw hit 9 one time, that was an NBA record. Dennis Scott hit 8 one time. NBA record. Now this dude's done back-to-back nights doing it.
Yeah, it's the greatest 2 nights of shooting in Pelicans history.
It was phenomenal. But besides being a great leader, this is a guy, if he's on playing like this and you get the other guys integrated, you mentioned Brandon Ingram, who's a star, and him and Zion on the same page, the sky is the limit. We've always said this, Doug. When the team is healthy, that's what we haven't seen. For the playoffs, they should be mostly healthy.
And when they're hitting threes, they can play with anybody. When C.J. McCollum and Trey Murphy are hitting threes, they can play with anybody because they have Zion and the inside out. In theory, you have Ingram as your mid-range guy, but they have not been able to get them together. Yeah, I mean, the way they hit threes on that road trip, you think they're going to come home and do the same thing, and then they just laid an egg on
Sunday. Love this producing, man. You guys were talking about threes, and they got a montage of threes back to back to back.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I appreciate the guys in the back, and I appreciate you. Now, what's it going to take for them? Let's just assume that they can get to the playoffs. What's it going to take to get – this is what bothers me. My friends, and I put something positive about them on Facebook, and then well, once they go to the NBA conference finals, it's a blow. I said, I said it's the conference finals or bust. How about we win a playoff series? Can't you be happy with that? I'm like, so what's it going to take to win a series and move forward?
Oh, well, look, I think this year it's unlikely to happen. I mean, you're going to
win one series.
Because you're either playing 1 or 2.
Right, I get it.
It's not like you got in as the 5.
But what would it take to do that?
Oh,
it's not impossible.
No, of course it's not impossible. The team's absolutely good enough. It takes them look, when they won this past week on the road, I'm trying to remember what game it was, they hit 22 threes. They hit 55% from three-pointers.
Sacramento and Gold State.
The Sacramento game.
Yeah.
If they do that, they can beat anybody.
Right.
The problem is they're going to have to hit 20 threes 4 times in a series, and that's difficult. And if it's Denver, I don't know how you play defense against that team because there's no matchup in the NBA.
They're so balanced, man.
For
People
Jokic.
don't even talk about
Actually,
Porter and Gordon.
The best defensive matchup for Jokic in the NBA might be Aaron Gordon, who's on his team. And he may be the one guy that I would say, let's let him play Jokic.
He doesn't have to guard him.
And he doesn't have to guard him. And look, they're an incredibly athletic, beautiful team. I don't know how you beat them. OKC, if you hit threes, they've proven they can play with them. They got to get better in the last 3 minutes, and they just have to make plays. I think if it's OKC, they could absolutely be in that series. I just being honest, I wouldn't bet on the Pelicans in either one of those series.
No.
And I would absolutely not say it's win conference finals.
Are you listening to Charles Tracy?
Yeah, I don't say that at all. What I say is let's get to the playoffs. Let's get some meaningful playoff games. Let's get a couple of wins in one of those series, and I would call it successful because I think I have seen a lot of positive growth. Look, remember where we were at this time last year? Pelicans were a disaster last year, and the organization decided to have a little patience. They decided not to blow the thing up when a lot of people were saying we need to blow this thing up. It was a lot lot of talk about Scoot Henderson in the draft, and we're going to trade Ingram.
So glad they didn't do
and
that.
they didn't. They sat on it and said, you know what? Let's run this thing back and see what happens. And they had they didn't get to 50, one of the most successful regular seasons in this franchise's history. I say give this a chance to build. Don't call it a failure until it fails.
I've been saying it the whole time.
Let's give it some time. Let's give it next year. Any playoff experience, I think, is good for this team.
And let me stress, the guy that did say the thing about the conference final, he actually knows a lot about basketball.
Well, look, all of my friends say the same thing.
But this one does. I have other friends that
would
don't.
exercise a little more patience. Look, remember when the Saints won in 09? 06 was great. Then 07 and 08 were steps backwards.
Yeah.
And then they blossomed in 09. Like, it takes a while. The organization had patience last year. You see that paying off. You see Zion's growth. And if you know anything about basketball, you know he's not done.
Right.
He's not where he's going to be yet.
No.
But he's 3 steps further than where he was last year at this time.
Well,
so let's see where this thing goes.
Zion is literally unstoppable to get to the hoop.
Unstoppable.
For real. And then combine the mid-range games.
By any large man trying to guard him, he's a man among boys against anybody.
We're going to be positive here because we've kind of touched it. But when you talk about Brandon Ingram at his best, think playoffs, 2 years ago when he took over basically, and he's doing, and he can take over.
Didn't on Sunday.
He did not. He's just coming back.
Yes.
I wish he could have gotten in the game Thursday or Friday. By the way, that was
sure.
You watched those 2 games. You're like, this team can win the NBA championship.
Yes.
But then you have the stink of something.
Yes.
Like,
well,
oh my
and
God.
look, that's the inconsistency of a team still learning itself.
Right.
And they are not where Denver is. Look, they're a year behind where OKC is, and that's just a fact. But I like everything I've seen with this team this year. Not everything, but almost everything I've seen with this team. I think they've done way more good than bad. And I like the idea of giving this thing a chance to grow.
Doug, I know you go to the restaurants. So
I do.
I'm going both of them for you. Okay?
Oh, nice.
Because
we went to Chase Detillier last week. It was awesome.
Isn't it phenomenal?
It was awesome.
I mean,
that place has the coolest vibe.
Thank you.
I've been telling
restaurant.
Okay, the Mouton family love going to that place.
Okay, hey, Evan, we got a big fan right here.
But I got to be honest with you. We hit the bar as hard as we hit the
They're both great.
menu. And the bar is awesome.
They're both great. The wine list is amazing. Well, there you go. Chase Detillier.
Thank you.
And Mr. John's Steakhouse, because Archie Rodenkirk said he saw you. He saw you go to Mr. John's because I said, who was the first one since I got the sponsorship to use it? He goes, Doug Mouton. I'm like, awesome. And I love it. So I have a tradition of giving you and your son Quentin a shirt.
Oh, thank you.
So here you go.
Very nice of you. Appreciate it.
There you go.
These
Task
shirts are awesome,
Performance. Have you heard about them?
Yes. They're awesome.
Appreciate you.
And I'm sure if I haven't, you'll tell people. Yes, thanks, Scott.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate you. That's
Anytime.
Doug Mouton. Check him out on WLAE-TV. That's right. Detillier's the radio. He's television. Hey, we're going to come to the end. Hey, yeoman's work for my crew back there. Logan, Sports Etouffee, great job. Appreciate you doing everything. Alex Chacon, and of course Danielle, Link. Wick. I'm sorry, Danielle Wick. I apologize. And then my producer, Will, the Thrill Hill. I appreciate him so much. And Jim and Ron, enjoy your time in Vegas. I wish I was there with you. We'll be back next week. Brian Kelly's coming either next week or the week after. See you then, right here on Primetime Sports.
Hey, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guest this week on Let's Talk with Keith Spera is Jazz Fest producer and director Quint Davis. Quint, we're going to be talking about Jimmy Buffett, and you wore a very appropriate shirt.
Yes, and hat. I came as a mini Jimmy.
Okay. A mini Jimmy.
A mini Jimmy. I Buffettized myself for your show.
Well, I appreciate that. We will talk about Jimmy Buffett and more this week on Let's Talk.
We are one community.
With one mission.
And one heartbeat. We are resilient.
Fearless.
Joyful.
And visionary.
We support one another through challenges.
Push each other towards excellence.
And are always filled with Christ's love.
We take pride in our traditions.
And stay true to our roots. We are committed to caring for every aspect of our community.
We are competitive, yet humble, and give all of our success to the glory of God.
We are invested in one another and view each other through the eyes of Christ.
We leave PJP transformed.
proud,
and capable of doing anything that we put our minds to.
We are loyal and true to the red, gold, and blue.
We are John Paul Jaguars.
What's up, my stargazing friends? Trace here. The best way to get excited about astronomy is to get to know a star and make it your friend. To do that, try observing a single star over and over again, like Vega. To find Vega, hit the skies just after midnight and look northeast. Vega is a blue-white main sequence star and the fifth brightest in the sky, so it should be pretty easy to spot. Vega is about 25 light years away, or about 150 billion miles, relatively close for a star. It was the first star to be photographed in 1850 and is the basis for all the star magnitudes in the sky. Vega is in the constellation Lyra the Harp and is the brightest star in the Summer Triangle asterism. See, each star has a story. The more you look, the more you'll see colors and relative positions in the sky. Eventually, they'll become familiar friends who you look forward to seeing night after night. Keep looking up.
Reading this made me think a little bit harder about what I was seeing every day.
The poem has ripped open something for me.
It's interesting to think of looking at lyrics as poetry.
That vibrancy, we can feel it. Poetry should bring the news.
Tuesdays at 9 p.m. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television.